tiny house 3.0, which we feel where we are now, is we did not have land to put our tinies on. We bought my first house without a place to park it and had to find a place.
Welcome to the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast, the show where you learn how to plan, build, and live the tiny lifestyle. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and this is episode 258 with Elisa and Ryk. I've always loved the idea of his and hers tiny houses, where a couple downsizes into two separate houses that are parked next to one another. And I finally found the perfect guests to interview about it. In this conversation, we'll learn why Elisa and Ryk decided to have two tiny houses, what they've had to do to park the two tiny houses, and how living tiny has changed their relationship. They have lots of great lessons to share about living tiny and advice for other couples who are interested in doing dual tiny homes. I hope you stick around for our conversation. Are you looking for a compact and affordable way to streamline your lifestyle? I'd like to tell you about the sponsor of this week's episode, PodXGo, and their new Grande S1 tiny home. This meticulously designed tiny home expands from a trailer to a 364 square foot home with just the push of a button. Certified by NOAA and built to ANSI 119.5 standards, the Grande S1 is towable with an F250 or equivalent. The PodXGo home is 99% factory built with healthy and eco-friendly materials, so you can rest easy knowing your home is taking care of you and the environment. It features a fully fitted kitchen, bedroom, bath, and living room with ingenious storage spaces throughout. PodXGo has even partnered with Renogy Solar Systems so you can live off-grid or reduce your energy bills. Discover the ultimate choice for your tiny lifestyle with PodXGo's Grande S1 model. PodXGo has launched their crowdfunding campaign with special pricing starting from just $49,000. Visit podxgo.com to watch a video of the S1 unfold and to get the crowdfunding launch discount. Again, that website is PodXGo, that's podxgo.com. Thank you so much to PodXGo for sponsoring our show. Right, I am here with Elisa and Ryk. Elisa, a spiritual mentor and entrepreneur, and Ryk, a finance guy, met, fell in love, and got married in Virginia almost 11 years ago. After experiencing a winter in upstate New York, they decided to move west and came to Seattle in 2015. Both consider themselves to be gypsies who want to travel and explore this country and the world as much as they can. Elisa discovered tiny houses on YouTube. After years of watching others live in tiny houses, they decided to take the plunge and buy not one, but two tinies and live in them full time. They've been living near Mount Hood, Oregon for the last 18 months. Now they are happily tiny housers and are looking to their next big adventure and planning to take their houses with them. Elisa and Ryk, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I feel like I've heard this so many times that someone says, like, I could live in a tiny house, but not with my husband or not with my wife. So you two, you've like cracked the code. You went for two separate tiny houses.
Yes, we went to a tiny house show in Portland, Oregon. We drove from Washington to Portland and we saw various tiny houses, and some were the old tumbleweeds, which I was like, now that I'm in one, I don't think I can do this. But we still loved the idea of being tiny because we saw various sizes, right? But they just seemed really small, unless you got one of those monster tinies, right? And but we do different things. We're active, independent people. Ryk works remotely, and he needs a space during the day, to do his work. So we said, well, let's just buy two. We did spend 4 months in my tiny before yours was ready, honey?
Okay.
Yes.
And I only sent him out of the house once.
I did a great job.
Hopefully he went willingly.
Well, I called him back in the house after I sent him out. But it's tough to exist in a small space with two people who already have kind of their lives mapped out or they're doing specific things. So we are very happy that we have two tinies and we're parked literally about 25 feet away from each other. Okay. And we face each other. And so in the morning, Ryk has a commute of about 25 feet to go, honey, to his work.
That's correct.
And yeah, but we still live in my tiny house primarily. Mine has the bigger kitchen. We sleep over here.
Okay.
But together. Whenever guests, go ahead.
Together.
We sleep together. Yes, we do. But whenever we have guests, they get Ryk's bed over on his tiny house, and it's like they have their own personal space. It works out beautifully for guests to come, and we still can host them, and they can have their privacy. They can enjoy their mornings, or their evenings, however they want to do it. And we have found we actually entertain a lot more people now, and we have found that it's been a great arrangement.
Well, I'm sure people have a reason to want to come visit you because you've got these two unique tiny houses to stay in.
Yeah, I think that's been the lure, right? But we've had many repeat guests, and we're hoping that, by helping our friends kind of see what the tiny lifestyle is like without any obligation or, just to enjoy a nice weekend, that they will go back and share that information with other people or their kids and hopefully perpetuate tiny house life.
Yeah.
I had a comment on the two tiny houses. So Elisa has a standard model, which is when you face the front, you exit on the right.
Okay.
We had mine on the opposite floor plan. So you exit on the left so we can see each other. So if we need to get in contact, we can wave at each other from where we are. And and because one of the things we're thinking about was putting them in L's instead of, parallel across from each other.
Yep.
So it works for that way.
So are the two houses the same model, like the same size, the same model, or are they totally different?
Our houses are very different.
Okay.
And we bought mine first. Mine was actually a show model that I saw at another home show with my mother several years before. And I loved it. It was one of the houses I walked in and I said, I can live here. I can be in this space because it's a shed style and it has a 13-foot ceiling or 12-foot ceiling and it's open concept.
Okay.
And the way it is designed, the stairs do not have a backing on them. Some people look at them a little strangely, but they really open up the space. And his is all one level with a bedroom in the back. His is a little longer. Mine's 26. His is 30.
Okay.
And it's a completely different style. His has redwood and black metal, and mine is blue, cedar painted deep blue with bright silver metal on the back.
Okay.
So we're very different and we like it that way. And it's always then everybody's like, well, I like her house, but I like his house, but I like her house, but I like his house. So it's always a topic of great discussion when people visit it or watch our video. There's been a lot of feedback on who likes whose house, But we're very happy for the fact that we can express our own individual likings.
Yep.
And still create a comfortable home.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, would you say that the two, the redwood and the blue and silver did you each kind of decide on the aesthetics of the house separately, a kind of your house, or was it a joint decision for each house?
Well, I'll tell you a little bit about mine and then Ryk can talk about his.
Okay.
Mine again was at a home show. I mean, I bought the demo model. So it was already painted a deep blue, which is my favorite color. And that's another reason why I liked it. And
perfect.
I really love the blue and the silver. I call my house is called Little Starly. I can't talk. little starry blue. And we built his from the ground up. It was customized by the same builder. So, honey, why don't you tell Ethan about your house?
Sure. So mine is called Lassen Creek, which is a favorite place that I had when I was growing up. And so we really kind of stretched the builder. We designed it based off one of their, standard templates, but then we, with some extra features like the redwood siding and the black panel. So this was all done during COVID. So it took about 6 months longer than they thought it would, just because of the supply chain issues.
Yep.
And of course, being a big dreamer, there were things I want that just weren't practical. So as I go into, what was it, level 3 or year 3 of tiny house, it's kind of like I can see some of the wisdom that they had in not doing everything I wanted. So, but it's great. The temperature is awesome. I have lots of glass, which lets a lot of light in.
Nice.
And yeah, so it's fantastic.
Awesome. Well, I can't decide between them myself. I'll post the YouTube. It'll be embedded on the show notes page for the episode, as well as some great pictures that you sent me. Those will all be on the show notes page so people can check them out for themselves.
Awesome.
So tell me about your parking, or go ahead.
I was going to say, well, the debate continues, right?
Okay.
The debate will continue.
Yeah. Tell me about your parking situation, where you are living, and has that been where you've been the whole time that you've been living tiny?
We were talking earlier, Rick and I, about tiny house versions. So tiny house 1.0 is, I'm thinking about a tiny, I'd like to live in a tiny, don't know how I'm going to do it, but I want to do it. Tiny house 2.0, you got your tiny. Awesome. And you're in the midst of building it and dealing with all the fun things that go along with that. Well, tiny house 3.0, which we feel where we are now, is we did not have land to put our tinies on. We bought my first house without a place to park it and had to find a place. So we were very fortunate that our builder had just gotten a flyer in the mail of a local RV park that had tiny houses for rent, nightly rentals, right? But they said basically, hey, we're open to tiny housers. Come and live here, because we allow people to live here on a permanent basis. So we checked it out literally on the way back home from the builder. And this RV park is beautiful. And so we said, because there's just no way we can purchase and have land by the time the houses are complete and ready to go. We'll just stay here. And so we moved our tinies here. And so we live in an RV park. But this RV park is a very nice park. It has a clubhouse and a pool and a hot tub, and it's forested, and it has woods all around. And so we literally, if you see the video, you can see we live amongst the cedar trees. Eventually, yes, we do want our own land, and I think part of maybe tiny house 3.5 or 4.0, it will be community. We are very focused on community, especially as older Gen Xers that we are. When you have other people around you that maybe share similar value systems and just kind of the desire to live tiny, it would be an awesome idea to have land and have several tinies on it. Several people living in their tinies on the land. We've looked at communities like Acony Bell and Tiny Tranquility, which are awesome. Both of those are beautiful communities. But because we have two tinies, that kind of throws a wrench into things, because in one space we weren't allowed to be on the same lot size. And on the other space, they wouldn't allow us to put the tinies in an L, like even if it was right up against the end of a lot, because of hookups and things like that. And
sure,
I get it. I totally get it. So eventually we would like to either invest in land with some other tiny home owners, or, somehow buy a small parcel of land where we can put our two tinies on there comfortably, and maybe invite some other people to come in temporarily, or, to stay for short time, or however that goes. But that's kind of the next version of, or the next goal in our tiny journey, is to find a permanent place for the tinies to reside.
Yeah.
Our tinies are really nice, and I know they travel well, but they're just not, we just are not equipped to like move them around constantly. That's just not kind of our lifestyle. So yeah, that's the end result, is to have some land where we can do this. And we all know land prices now. So that's why we were thinking of, eventually maybe coming in with some other people who would like the same thing as we would, and either subdivide the land from there, or we all go in as investors, and do our own little tiny home community. It doesn't have to be as big as Tiny Tranquility or Acony Bell.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just, 5 or 6 of us.
Maybe there's a listener who wants to do this with you.
Yes, we would be welcome to talking to anybody. We are just, this is new territory, for us, Ethan, and I think for the country. As people age, and we're talking from our generation here, we don't have the same advantages that our parents had, or maybe other generations had.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to live our lives a little differently too. So this is how we are seeing things, but I also think it is the way of the future. Okay, you have 5 acres of land. Why do you need all that to yourself? I mean, share that and have some other people who can help you out as life progresses, and you can help them out, and we can share, kind of community surroundings. And I think that's a much better way to age in place than going to an old folks home. Or we're not ready for that yet, are we, honey? We're not ready for the old folks home, but we want to maintain our independence. We want to maintain our lifestyle, and we want to do this as long as we can. So this is why we were thinking community, even if it's a small one, is kind of what we're focusing on and what we're looking for.
What I was finding out is we've been looking for land all up and down, the West Coast, on the East Coast. And, of course, everybody knows that zoning is hit or miss, and it depends. Mm-hmm. But that's been quite the journey, too. And in level 1 or level 2 is saying, when we were upstate Washington, we thought they were really progressive. But we already had our tiny homes built, and we wanted to buy some land. And they wanted to approve the plans of our tiny homes before we built them.
Oh boy.
And we're like, oh, they're already built. And they're like, well, we can't vary on that. And we're like, okay, well, there's a state called Oregon that's, a little more progressive down there. So,
yeah.
So it's just, the whole journey has just been very weird and very strange.
Yeah. We even offered, this was the Thurston County in Washington State.
Uh-huh.
We even said our houses are NOAA certified. They're certified. I mean, they're going to be built to a certain level of safety and sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, oh, we don't recognize any certifications. It has to be approved by our whoever approves them.
Yeah, that's a little strange. That feels like they're looking at it from a traditional single family home perspective, where you would need the plans submitted to the town before you build.
Yes. And so, we researched many of the counties around us here in Washington and Oregon.
Uh-huh.
It's very interesting, as we all know, right? When you take it down to the county level. I mean, we even went to Wasco County, which is down in Hood River, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
And they were very excited that we had tinies. They were like, oh yeah, we're down with that. We're cool with it.
Yeah.
And then some other counties, like right next door, said, yeah, we like tinies, but you have to take them off the wheels. And then, one other county said, yeah, we'll do tinies, but they have to be on a foundation. They have to be not just on skids. They have to be on a foundation. So everybody's a little, at least in Oregon, they're recognizing it. But it is, that is, I guess, part of Tiny House 2.0. When you're really trying to figure out where to live, you've got to do your due diligence, and you've got to, even, we thought for sure we could put our tiny someplace. And that's why I went ahead and bought my house. Right. And we had done some research, but when you really dig in deep, it's, you really have to do your research. And so that's why we came to the conclusion that for us, trying to find land where the ordinances can be positive and, or at least they're curious and say, hey, talk to us about it.
Yeah.
And then to go in on with other people and living there, that I feel like that's going to be something that's going to come up much more frequently as we move forward in this movement of tiny houses.
Yeah.
And I did want to say it's getting better every day. More and more states, more and more counties and locations are opening up.
Absolutely.
CEA has been doing a lot of work. There's a bunch of other organizations that are working legislatively and with local councils. And there's just a whole lot of groundswell support for tiny homes, and people are working with their local, governments. And so that's kind of what's needed, because you've got to jump up and down just to be seen a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the places that have recognized that they have a shortage of housing and they've started to try to address that problem are going to be much more receptive to movable tiny homes, because they are such a great solution. They're kind of ready-made, they're quality. They, not like you are migrants, like coming to live somewhere for a couple of months. You're going to become members of the community and live there.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's a difference there. The desire for community, the desire to, and not to say that RVs don't have communities as well, but that's usually more transient of nature, of the natures is transiency. But for us, we've talked to a lot of other tiny home owners. There are other tiny home owners in the park here who live here like us, and we've spoken with some of them. We're fortunate that we live in an area where Portland has passed the ADU ordinance, so that tinies are now much more visible on Facebook and et cetera, et cetera. So people are more familiar with what a tiny house is.
Yeah.
I think when you go out further, people are less familiar and they just think of it as an RV. So I think that's the main work we have to do is really talking to these ordinances, councils and counties to say, we're not transient. We want to be permanent. And it's just our homes are on wheels. Maybe we might take them for a little vacation one day or something, but we're going to come back. We're going to be there. We're going to be there. And we want to be members of the community. We're not just here to be here for a few months and leave. So that's what I hope that we can foster with. I'm sorry, that's my dog. That we can foster that type of community and communication with these other counties.
So I feel like at I don't know how old you two are, but you've mentioned kind of growing old, and I feel like at this point in life, I could envision a couple like you kind of building their dream home, kind of like building that last biggest, nicest home that they are going to live in before kind of really getting old. You don't seem that old. Doing two tiny houses is a really novel and kind of different approach to that. I'm curious, did you compare kind of in cost, like, building one standard home versus the two tiny homes? And just, I'm curious to kind of get in your head about the decision-making process on doing the two tiny homes versus maybe one, small home.
Right. That's a really good point. So we have had comments on our video. It's like, wow, you've spent a lot of money and it's so expensive. How could you do that? But for the total cost between our two homes, mine was used. Basically, it was a show model and his was custom built. We have spent less than $200,000. I don't know. There might be a few places left in the country. If you're a good builder, like you can build by yourself, that you can build your quote dream home for less than 200,000. Hats off to you. That's not possible where we live.
Yeah.
And that's not even in the cards for a lot of people in our age group who got slammed by the recession and, I owned a condo at one point, went underwater during the recession. And so I lost all my equity in that home. And so I don't have, and we didn't have combined income. We didn't have, $300, $400, $500,000 to build a custom dream home of our own. And even to buy, we live in the Pacific Northwest. And I know we got comments on our film about, how could you spend so much money there? Well, if you live in Arkansas or you live in the South or whatever, your prices are cheaper, okay, great. You can probably buy a house maybe for 200,000, like a house. That's impossible here.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And so this was our answer to that. This way we get what we like. He has his house and what he likes in his house. I have my house, what I like in mine. We have built them with quality builders, so they're not going to fall apart in a year or so. And I think that's another thing people are wondering now. How long do tinies last? Well, our builders pretty much built these houses like they would a little house, a house,
yeah.
Maybe a few modifications, but we don't have plastic in our houses. They're built with wood and metal and steel. And so I think for the price that we paid combined, I just don't think if somebody can build their dream home for under 200,000, like a stick built dream home on a quarter acre lot, you go for it. But we couldn't.
And what's great is that we're very unique people, and we each have our unique tastes, and we like each other's tastes, but we want our own tastes. And so that's really hard to do if you're living in one house. It's like, okay, then you start negotiating. Okay, I want the kitchen, you can have the bedroom or the garage,
or the man cave.
And so you start this negotiation, but this way we can do it our way.
Yep.
Because what's important to both of us is that our surroundings help us thrive. And that's what our tiny homes are designed to do. We walk in, it has the things that we need to help us, be our best. The other great thing was, as you get older, and let's say we wanted to buy a house, we'd have to take every resource we had, convert it into the house. We wouldn't have anything left over for a reserve.
Yeah.
Which is really important. Plus, we like to travel, and that's a blast, and that's what we like to do. So we've kind of said this is what's important to us, and so therefore we can live in a smaller house and still have these other items that we can do. The thing that's really important, I think, for everybody to listen or to think about is that when you go out to look for a tiny house, make sure that it's certified, either NOAA or there's a couple of other ones out there. Because a lot of people have just built them on a trailer on the weekends, and this is their first and only, or they're just getting started. And so you want somebody to say yes, the electrical works, yes, the plumbing works. It's all the whatever code there is. So
yeah,
that's one of my big messages for people.
And I would just like to add to that we were able to buy these houses. We were fortunate enough to have the resources to buy them outright. I didn't want to carry a mortgage into my 60s and 70s. I just don't. And yes, we do pay a lot rent for each of our lots, but that totals less than $2,000 a month and well under 200, well under $2,000 a month. So this way we keep our finances very minimal, yet we still have all the perks of, living a nice lifestyle, a comfortable lifestyle. And I know tiny home financing is still also in its infancy. And that was another reason why we did pay cash, because it just really wasn't that many. There weren't that many places to get financing even several years ago. I think that's going to change. I think that's going to improve. And so, there's a huge difference in carrying a mortgage of $150,000 to $200,000 versus a $500,000 mortgage, right? And I just didn't want to be paying that until the day I died. And so, yeah, that was another reason why we chose this at this time of our lives, because instead of buying that dream house and having that mortgage, we decided to get our tinies and pay for them outright. And therefore, the only thing we have is the rent each month, and we're set.
Nice. How has living tiny changed your relationship?
I'll let you take that first, honey.
Well, I want to hear from both. Yeah, I want to hear from both of you.
Oh yeah. Okay, buckle in. No. I think it's made it better. And the reason being, we talk more, I think. And there are times when she wants to be by herself, or she's going to watch some special TV series that, that I'm not as interested in. I can come over to my place, read a book or watch TV or, do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And, we still come together and we eat meals and we go to the store and we do a whole bunch of stuff together, but we're not beholden to be in each other's space day after day after day, minute after minute. And I think that's important, especially for everybody. I think everybody needs quality space and quality time to themselves and in their relationships.
I would agree. I think our relationship has improved. We communicate more. It's very ironic how we live in two separate houses, but we communicate more. We text all the time. I come over for coffee break at about 3:00 each day. And I bring my coffee cup with the cream in it. He's got the coffee maker. So we sit and chat for a few minutes. The dog comes with us and we have a really nice time. And I think we solve problems better together now, because just this morning we had an issue because it's snowing here in Oregon. It's cold. It's probably colder than on the East Coast. And I lost my hot water. Yeah, I bet you do, right? And I think you said something in your blog this morning about pipes freezing over. Well, I lost my hot water because my water filter had filled up and then gotten all, I don't know what, it froze or something. It just was crazy. So we're out there in the snow and both of us are in our jammies, in the snow. We're fixing this water filter and we're going back in to check and everything. But because of that, we have to solve problems together. It's not like, oh honey, you take care of this. It's your thing to do that. No, it's we both get in on it. Whenever he has a problem with his house or an issue, I'm over there and we're both trying to solve it together because we both want to understand what's going on with our homes.
Nice.
And I think that has really drawn us closer as partners and just, accomplishing things and especially the fact that now we can travel. So we talk a lot about, okay, where are we going this year? What are we going to be doing? What state are we visiting? Things like that. And I think for the good, that has really helped our relationship because we're constantly checking in. It's not just like he's down in the man cave for hours. I don't see him. I don't talk to him. We have a lot more contact and communication.
Nice. Well, could you each share maybe a lesson or two that you've learned since you went tiny?
Well, I think, the lesson I think I've learned in this is that everybody who comes into tiny homes or drawn to tiny homes come in from various different places and various different backgrounds and desires and goals, right? I think the wonderful thing that we've learned is that there are other people like us out here who are interested in doing that. And we're really happy to help. But, it's not for everybody. And tiny living's not for everybody. And it's an option, certainly, but it's not for everybody. And I think we've had to learn, sometimes that there are just going to be people who want to kind of debate with us and argue with us. Is, why are you doing this? And I've just chosen not to engage for that matter, because I think everybody's on their own path and they have to figure it out for themselves. I'm not going to spoon feed you. I'm here to help you. I really want to help people kind of come into the tiny life, but you have to You have to want that. And so we've kind of learned just to, you know, this is who we are. We're not going to press anybody on this lifestyle because it's a very different one. And especially for people who are a little older, maybe more traditional, it's something that's a big lifestyle change, right? So
yeah,
I don't push it on people as the best thing since sliced bread unless that's what you've been looking for. And this is, you know, you really know it. I think another lesson too is talking with builders, that there are great builders out there. There are fantastic builders out there. But I would say to anybody who's interested in the tiny lifestyle and are looking for someone to build their home versus build it yourself, make sure you can communicate with your builder. Make sure that your builders understand tinies. And I think you had that on a previous podcast, is that, man, there's everybody jumping in the game now, right? But your biggest lesson is buyer beware. You've got to really do your research. And we had to learn that lesson too. We really had to be very focused on what we want and what we needed in our homes, right? And fight for that.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to say, no, not this builder. It's okay to step back and walk away if you get a lot of no's. You know, it's your tiny home. It's got to be the way that you envision it. So your price may go up, you know, to do all your custom work, or you can save time and do it yourself later on. But at the same time, you know, it takes teamwork. And so you have to have a good feeling with your builder that when you come up with an idea that they're just not, nope, we don't do that. And if that happens too much, it's okay to find another builder. Take the time to go, you know, sort it out and look around.
And I would just like to add one more thing. You know, once you have a tiny home, and even if you have a brand new home, I've lived in every type of imaginable dwelling for, you know, my life. And so tiny homes are, you know, we have a well-built tiny home, but just like anything else, like weather, right? Who knows? Tiny homes react to weather a little differently because they're on wheels, right? So the lesson that we had to learn here is that you have to be involved with your tiny home. And it's a partnership with your tiny home, so to speak, because it's still such a new, it's such a new industry. We had some issues when we first moved into the park. We called a plumber. Okay, what do you have? Plumbing issues? You call a plumber. Well, the plumber comes, he's like, I've never worked on something like this before. Now he did an okay job because he was a good guy and he wanted to learn. He's like, okay, well, you know, I'm going to take this chance to really check this out and see how this works. And that's great. But I think as a tiny home owner, you have to be more engaged with your home. And that's a lesson too that we learned pretty quickly. and right up to this morning when we were out in our jammas in the snow trying to put a water filter on.
It's things like being out and learning to keep your water running when the temperature goes below zero.
Yeah.
Because you're not on a foundation, and you know your pipes may freeze, or you know something. And so it's being adaptable as well. Mm-hmm. The other lesson that I've learned is imagine what you can do and then try and do it, because you never know what you can accomplish. Like I put in backsplash in my kitchen. I'd never done backsplash before. All I did was watch YouTube. You know, as long as you can find it on YouTube and watch it for a while, you know, the backsplash turned out great. It stayed on the wall. All my nightmares that I thought would happen, you know, weren't even a thing. So, you know, try it. And then if you don't like it, you can take it down and do something else, because it's such a small footprint that you're not investing 20,000. You're investing like $500 to do it yourself.
Yeah. I like that. And I'll add that I started my build in 2012, finished it in 2013, and I'm still learning things about the house and about keeping things running and moving to this day.
Yes.
So it's a never ending learning process, which is fun. It can be frustrating. But ultimately it just makes you a a better homeowner and more, you learn new skills all the time.
Yes. We've learned,
Yeah.
we've owned homes. Both of us have owned homes
Mm-hmm.
separately and together. And
Yeah.
we've learned things that I never knew. And I'm glad I learned them. I'm really glad, because it also aids to this feeling or the ability to be more self-sufficient. We're not total pioneers. We're not completely off grid. We don't, grow our own food or anything like that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
that feeling of like, I accomplished this, like, my husband put in that backsplash, and that we were able to fix our water issue this morning without totally, freaking out and whatnot. That's a great feeling. That is an awesome feeling, to be able to accomplish these things with your house, to work in partnership with your home,
Nice. Well, I'm curious, what, I'll ask the question in two different ways and take it however you want. What would you do differently, if you were going to do it again, in terms of the his and hers tiny house, and or, what would be your advice to a couple who is looking to do dual tiny homes? Anything specific to the dual tiny home setup that you wish you knew before, that you can pass along?
Those are great questions. I think I would tell other people who want to do the dual tiny homes, number one, it's not impossible. It And again, you have to be really communicate about it and how you want it done. It is doable. I do feel that in today's market, I'm seeing a lot of used tinies on the market now, they look beautiful. So consider that. You don't necessarily have to custom build your tinies unless you want to. There's a lot of beautiful homes out there for sale. So you can always start that way. What I would do differently is my rig is a 26 and I like it. It's great. If I had the opportunity to trade up, I love my home. I would definitely, though, try to go a little bit bigger, just a tad bit bigger. But again, that's all personal preference. I've seen people just, snug as bugs and happy as clams in a 16 to 20 foot tiny. It's
Okay.
just a personal preference, right? But I would consider that a slightly larger one in the future. But also, too, consider, you don't have to go through a builder necessarily. If you really do your due diligence, and if you're thinking of buying a used tiny, go and visit that tiny, walk that tiny, ask every question you can. And then I think you can do just as well with a used one too. And I think we're going to come up into the age now of tiny home renos, right? We're going to have like a little HTV thing, renovate your tiny home, because we're kind of getting into that with the fact that many people have houses now and are trying to sell them. And I think for anybody who wants to do this as a couple, your biggest key is, know what your life goals are, know what you guys want to be doing, and decide if this is something you're going to do for the next 5 or 10 years, or if this is going to be a permanent thing for you two. And know that in the end, if it doesn't work for you, it's okay. There are still tons of lifestyle options out there. It's okay if it doesn't work for you. But for us, it did. But I think because we did an incredible amount of homework before we started this, and there were still things we couldn't foresee, but we tried to walk in with our eyes as wide open as possible.
Nice. What about you, Ryk?
It's a journey, right? And so being yourself is a journey. Being together is a different journey. And so give each other, like, if you're going to do this together, you don't have to have the same model. Let each other breathe a little bit, and let each person be what they can be and do what they like. Give input, but at the end, it's let them make their own decisions, because I think that gives everybody the best trust and the best level of kind of empowerment in a way. You're saying, I see what you're doing. I wouldn't do it, but if you like it, go ahead. That's great. The other thing is, so my came with a empty bedroom. We had no bedroom, and so I was able to sit down and design something that was very unique
Uh-huh.
with the bookcases underneath it, and then the bed on top. And so, being able to use your creativity to solve your own problems is just really fun to do. And so, like for the first year, I would just come and stand in my tiny house, in disbelief that I was in a tiny house, right? But then also, it's like, what am I going to do here? And so, you just stand there, and after a while, you go, oh, I could do this or this or this or this, and it's really fun to experience that.
Nice. Nice. Well, one thing that I like to ask all my guests is, what are 2 or 3 resources that have helped you out along the way that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Wow. Well, first of all, we are members of the Tiny Home Industry Association, the THIA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We find that going on their website provides amazing information from all around the country. It's a great resource if you're thinking about tiny, if you're depending on where you live, and you're like, well, how do they view tinies around in my county, in my state? Chances are you're going to find some great information on that website, and it's all in one place versus having to go to every single county website and try to research it yourself. So that's a great resource we've come into that we really, really are happy with. Another resource is just, YouTube. And that's how, for several years I watched all the YouTube videos and saved my favorite ones and listened to people's stories, because I feel what's more interesting about tiny houses than the tiny houses themselves are the stories about the people who went tiny, because they reflect people who are looking at something slightly different. And that's not, you might be in the neighborhood where you're the only one thinking that way, right? And it's really nice to feel that there are other people out there who feel the same way that you do. So I would say those have been my 2 biggest resources. What about you, honey?
I would say use existing tiny home members, and like ones that have Airbnbs or something like that, go stay overnight in one. There was one we had in Seattle, and it was beautiful, but it had this kind of like apex window, that the triangle window. And so you wake up in the middle of the night and you whack your head on it. It's a beautiful design, but at the end of the night, you're kind of scratching your head because you whacked it too much. So just try and live in the space. So I think existing tiny home people are a great resource.
Well, Elisa and Ryk, thank you so much for being guests on the show. This was so much fun, and I can't wait to share this with the listeners.
Thank you so much, Ethan. We're so honored that you asked us to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Ethan. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you so much to Elisa and Ryk for being guests on the show today. You can find the show notes, including photos of both tiny houses, a video tour of both tiny houses, and as always, a complete written transcript of this interview. That's all at thetinyhouse.net/258. Again, thetinyhouse.net/258. Thank you so much to PodXGo for being the sponsor of this episode. You can learn more about PodXGo and the Grande S1 Tiny House at podxgo.com. Well, that's all for this week. I'm your host, Ethan Waldman, and I'll be back next week with another episode of the Tiny House Lifestyle Podcast.